So I think Pam just outed me.
Oh.
I was at the ACLU running the national privacy effort in the post 9/11 period and fighting against some of the stuff that Pam was talking about. And we lost in spectacular fashion. So let me share my bias because I think it'll help inform your response to my comments. I fear the government having access to my data. But I really don't have a great deal of concern about companies having access to my data. I have a lot of concern when really sophisticated companies help the government get access to my data. And that's kind of the way I think about this. But Pam, I kind of want to return to your sort of original question about this massive data set that you were talking about in India, and to Ilan's point about big data sets, I think. I think we've set up this sort of oppositional relationship where it's either we get to build a great company or we get to have privacy. We get to solve some problems or people get to hold their data back. And it doesn't seem like that's the right way to think about it. I'm far more optimistic than that. What I see is that we should be rethinking sort of the way that we talk about this balance. There seems to be an enormous amount of consumer benefit that is created by the app world. And there's an enormous number of goods and services that are provided now to consumers through apps, which are either free or virtually free. There are tools and efficiencies that are brought to their lives that, again, are either free or virtually free. And so when we think about this question about privacy, I don't think it's wise to think about it in isolation. I think we should be thinking about what are the other social values that we care about. And I don't take a backseat to anybody on my respect for privacy. I fight for it day in and day out. But I think we also need to see what else can be done and feel optimistic about that so that we can go ahead and build stuff around it.
It's probably, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
It's probably worth mentioning that we were in Austin last night and had a representative from the Dallas Federal Trade Commission come up and speak to the crowd, and she was great. She was very, very informed on all of the policy positions that the FTC has taken, and there have been many. But they're more to the point. She talked about a comprehensive way of looking at privacy for app developers, and fully admitted that they really have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to what you guys do for a living. That they are. She was overflowing with gratitude that so many people had come out to talk to her and to attend these events. But she said to the audience, you need to, when you sit down to build an app, think about privacy by design, the same way we thought about social by design, and then didn't refute John Potter's rather colorful proclamation that we are straight in the gun sights of the FTC right now. And it's true. I mean, they may not understand what's going on, but they are coming after us. And part of that is an education process, but the rest of it is, it's not about deciding, do I want to build a big company or do I want to have privacy? It's that you can build a really big company and then fall ass backwards into a 20-year review as Facebook or Google by the FTC. Anytime they want to look at your books, you can accidentally suck data when you're not thinking about the current business model, but thinking about what you want to do next, and you are the subject of a lawsuit, but also FTC civil complaints, and that is the impetus behind these events. So that is the climate we are working in. It's yes, big data. Yes, it's important to think about the business models. Yes, we need to be thinking about that. But there's some urgency behind this. And in this room and in this industry, we can't forget that. Can I
respond to that a little bit? We're on the other side of that. We have filed some very successful FTC complaints against companies. One of the complaints we filed was against a data broker. And what they were doing is they were requiring consumers to send in a piece of paper to opt out of their data broker listing. And we were just like, okay, these guys are an online company and the only thing they do on paper is the opt-out. That's bogus. So we actually got an enforcement action and now they have an online opt-out. That's fair. I think that there's a couple of key things that would really help all of you in terms of thinking about the FTC and what they care about. They care about something called fair information practices. How many of you have actually read those or know what they are? Okay. Fair information practices are a set of kind of universal, actually they are global, worldwide principles agreed on and ratified by 88 countries. And there are principles that say, hey, be fair in these ways. Minimize what you collect. When you collect it, make sure it's accurate. And I'm happy to send all of you a real basic, like one-pager on this, and it's really simple. They care about that. They also care about unfair and deceptive trade practices. And let me give you a really good kind of mobile app example of this. All right. I'm trying not to step on any toes or name names, and I'm going to make sure I don't. Here's a real example.
Popular name.
There's a company. There's a retail company that's collecting unique IDs off of fences. No big deal. The only problem is that their privacy policy says we really care about privacy and we collect X, Y, and Z from you. And guess what they do not mention?
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. Now, they're collecting it two ways. They're collecting it through a mobile app that's branded under their name, and they're collecting it just as people are walking through the store. So they really need a privacy policy that declares this. Okay, so when you download the mobile app, which I've done, you can read you can go to the developer's site, or you can read the privacy policy in the application, right? The privacy policy in the application also does not disclose what's happening. Okay, guys, this is a problem because, all right, when the FTC looks at this, they're going to go, okay, what donkey gets the tail? So you've got a developer, you've got a retail business, and then you've got probably someone doing some, analytics on the back end. That's three parties. I think in this case, I know for sure that the retail, the analytics guys on the back end do offer an opt-out, but no one's linking to it. So I think they're off the hook, I really do. I think the developers are probably going to be on the hook a little bit, and I think the retailer a lot of it. So what could be done by an app developer in this situation? Have a really great attorney who looks at this and goes, hey guys, I think we see a flaming FTC flag here because you know what? There's a disclosure issue. There's a discrepancy. And the key here, consistency. Is this retailer, is the customer, the publisher, acting in congruence with what you know to be the truth? Yeah. If you see a discrepancy there, you've got a potential problem and you got to make them behave. It's not necessarily your fault. It's their discrepancy, but you can get pinned with it.
Yeah, but Pam, I learned this lesson. And I don't know if other people in the audience have here, sorry.
I learned this lesson at Facebook, really pretty simply. Isn't the lesson that if you don't say it, you can't get caught? Like if you don't make a promise about it, you can do whatever the hell you want as an app developer. Isn't that really where we're at?
Yes.
I mean, is it for the trustee folks? That's what it seems like it boils down to me as somebody who's been in this world for a while.
I tend to disagree, actually. You can put whatever you want in your privacy policy. If it's not reasonable, you can get sued. And even if you end up after a $3 million in legal fee lawsuit with a judgment in your favor, it's still a big waste of your company's time. Our privacy policy from the beginning, from day one when we launched the product, said we will automatically detect your UDID upon registration. It was right there. We said it right there.
That's good.
And we still got sued over it.
That's good. Oh, you did? That's good.
There was a Wall Street Journal. You may ask where did why did this privacy? And I'm the chief lawyer for the company, so where did this come to me? On the first time is there was a Wall Street Journal article about 18 months ago that came out and said something like your apps are spying on you or your apps are watching you. Immediately, anytime there's a Wall Street Journal or New York Times article like that, you can expect that there's going to be a class action lawsuit within 10 days.
Yeah.
And there was.
Or 10.
Or
Yeah.
10, and there were multiple in multiple jurisdictions, including Canada.
Is there anyone here from the New York Times?
It doesn't matter if the article was true. It didn't matter that it was in our privacy policy. It didn't matter what the article said. No one came to talk to me. No one came to talk to anybody. They will draw, and it was Pandora and us and the Weather Channel. It didn't matter. So yes, privacy policies are important. I think you absolutely have to disclose and be upfront with what you're doing. But if you're not doing something, if you're doing something unreasonable, which I don't think we were doing in this situation, you can still get. I mean, the headache is not going to be the end verdict where you have to make a change to your privacy policy. The real, pain for a company, especially a small startup company, is going to be 90% of your executive team spending 90% of the next 2 years dealing with an issue like that. So that's really something you have to consider as well.
Yeah, that's not fun. I can really understand how that is just really a problem.
And I'll just follow up to say that we got dropped about 3 months later, so.
I just want to sort of add a couple comments. I think you're absolutely right. When in terms of lawsuit, people are actually not looking at how aggressive your privacy policy is. It's actually looking at, do you have deeper pockets, right? Is your brand worth to sue, frankly? And as you're talking about, I was actually in Atlanta 2 weeks ago, meeting with head of mobile weather channel, and they actually got a class lawsuit 4 times in the last year or so. I would say that the weather channel probably one of the brand that actually very strict about private policy and enforce that, because the brand is very important to them. Why they got picked? So today's class lawsuit, they just look at the top 20, whatever the app in the app store. That's what they go after. They go after the big brand. They go after actually company have the money. It's not about, for example, if you are a small developer, you are aggressive, you're doing a lot of things sort of on the boundary, even go beyond that. When you get a suit, probably not when you're actually small, because why people sue you? You don't have money. You don't really have a business to get sued. Now, should you do the right things? Absolutely, right? You should thinking about a privacy by design, as we talked about. You should thinking about what you are in the business for, right? If you only need 2 or 3 information, and that's only 2 or 3 information you should asking for. By the way, Harris a study demonstrate that if you ask less information from user, there are more trust you're going to build between you and user, right? Because if you're thinking about, based on what app you're actually going to be doing, if you ask 10, 20 things, and people knows, right? For example, and you ask more than you need, and there's actually mistrust instantly building on that. And the more important, when you do that, likely user will not give you the data information. Secondarily, they're not going to actually use your app, right? So it's actually very important, the privacy by design, and just do what you need to do, and tell people what you do, building the trust, and give the people the choice. I think that's very, very important. In terms of lawsuit, so for example, the brand I just mentioned, right? In terms of user experience, we'll talk about that, because the mobile form factor is very, very important. And in terms of provide user privacy policy, do you actually translate 2,000 words, 10-page privacy policy, which you do online to mobile? Nobody going to be able to read it. So if, by the fact that you actually have to very sort of boil down, use common language, and tell people what it is, what it's actually about. And some brand, because of the litigation risk, right? So they actually translate entire terms condition to mobile. Guess what? Nobody read it.
Anyone here ever gone to the iTunes site and checked out someone's privacy policy before downloading an app?
No. I have.
Does anyone know where to find the privacy policy?
I do.
You do?
And people do. People.
Well, actually, there's nowhere at the iTunes site to find a privacy policy.
You have to download the app.
Right, you have to download the app.
Well, how many people here have
When you update the software.
How many people here?
When you update the software.
When you update iTunes, of course, iTunes itself provides you with their own privacy policy.
not
But
the
if you're a
app.
developer trying to get your privacy policy, and frankly,
How many people have a written privacy policy of developers here? Does everybody?
I write them.
Right.
now as a consumer, if I was a consumer advocate, and I know this is part of a settlement that's recently happened with the California Secretary of State, where Apple will be. There will be a place to put your privacy policy, so before you download an app and register for it and use it and then open up the privacy policy, or have to go to the app's website, or maybe you don't have a website for whatever reason, the privacy policy is there. So this really has to be a concerted effort between platform providers, developers, and other parties to this debate.
And the thing, oh, yes, go ahead.
What if you don't realize you're misbehaving?
Right.
So back in January, there was a company called Flingo
Right.
that there was kind of this Android watchdog type of site that noticed that they were retrieving information that was outside of their privacy policy. It brought to their attention, and then they realized that, based on the different versions that have been released for Android, that they were outside the scope of their privacy policy and didn't realize it. And also they found some bugs that also allowed some information, private information, to be released that they didn't know about, and then they addressed it at that time. So what happens then? When you do have a privacy policy, but obviously the privacy policy of, the versions change, you don't keep up with it, and or you have bugs, what do you do then as a company?
That's something that you really have to watch very closely, because that is a problem. The moment that you are not complying with your own privacy policy, that's really a potential violation of something called the Section 5 of the FTC Act. You don't want to do it. So it needs to be, I think part of where we are right now is growing pains, period. And one of the kind of privacy 101 things is that your privacy policy needs to match what you're doing on the back end. And I think part of what you're talking about with the lawsuits and whatnot, I think some of these things are like the early days. I remember, I don't know if you remember Passport, Microsoft Passport, when they got sued over a very small minor thing in their privacy policy. Those kind of lawsuits have really died out. They were kind of like the sacrificial lamb. We're in the sacrificial lamb time period for mobile apps. So you want to be the company that's careful. And I do think there's a public education component to this, don't you?
Sure, but even being careful, when you're one of 8 apps that were featured in a Wall Street Journal article, it really, and we had privacy, security, and safety built in from the beginning of Text Plus. I mean, really, we didn't launch the product until we had all these considerations in place. Obviously, it's an ever-changing, you're constantly developing new tools, new features, new implementations. But we had these considerations in mind. We knew what Text Plus could be. We knew it was social. We knew it was communication. And so we had privacy settings in from the beginning. All I'm saying is that sometimes even doing all the right things, you can still get into trouble. And it's unfortunate, but that's.
Well, that holds true for IP as well, though. I mean, anybody who's ever come and pushed one of their own apps and then gotten a nice notice that you violated 43 patents and you owe somebody $45,000 or $10 million knows what that's like. It's the nature of the business. Sure. The real question, and I think one of the real values of having you guys up here tonight, is to talk about the federal and state regulatory side of this. The question was asked last night, which is pretty interesting, is that as developers, as software engineers, we are not certified by any state or federal body the way that a mechanical engineer is, or somebody builds a bridge, right? So to your point earlier, what if cars start going off the side of my bridge because I built my app poorly, or it doesn't line up with the API anymore? Am I responsible for that? And what's my civil exposure? And so that's something that we all need to be aware of. The privacy policy is part of that, but so is the diligence with which the CEO talks to their frontline coder, talks to their general counsel. Whether it's 3 guys in a garage or a 250-person company, everybody needs to understand what that line looks like.
How many people have GC at their company, the general counsel of the company? How many people have a lawyer on staff? So not everybody's going to have the same kind of legal knowledge. Philip, you want to say?
Isn't the FTC also looking at overkill? In other words, if you're collecting more information than what you need for functionality, that should be a warning sign. I mean, that's my interpretation. I'm not an attorney, but that's my interpretation of what the FTC is also looking at.
I think that's absolutely right. And you know what, I was thinking again, I think that in terms of privacy, I mean, an association like this, I hope what really happens is that there's some kind of shared, knowledge and legal counsel that can happen, because that would be ideal to help kind of spread that knowledge. Look, there are a couple things that are really coming up over and over and over again among consumers, and if you watch what consumers are griping about, that's what complaints are flowing into the FTC. And I'll tell you what they are right now for mobile apps. Over-collection of information, especially contact information, photographs, things that are being sucked from people's, anything from the contact list. That's really a hot button thing right now. And I suspect that contact information sucked from tablets, et cetera, is just going to continue to be very hot.
Just one quick comment to that gentleman's question. I think that based on people's hands raised, sort of internal resource seems like very limited in the app developer environment, right? Not many companies have the GC or legal counsel. I think a few things, right? The forum like tonight is a good sort of a channel process to get more educated, to get a very sort of awareness, privacy by design. That's all things you should be actually careful. Secondarily, I think it's important there are industry forum, industry association, and also there are a number of privacy service solution provided in the industry, including, for example, TRUSTe, that I actually need to go out and get the help. If you don't have resource internally, and then you need to actually sort of working with industry expert, with the association, with forum like this tonight, and to get additional help.
Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about when I say Google Wi-Fi or Google Wi-Spy. The overcollection issue is exactly the source of tension that we're all facing, right? To the FTC, to the California Attorney General, to the Attorney General of most states, to the privacy commissioners with extraordinary enforcement authority in almost every other jurisdiction around the world, if you collect more data and you tell people you're going to collect, or than that you actually, in their opinion, need to collect, you're in violation. And you can get hit with all sorts of sanctions, including injunctions. You can be forced to disgorge the data. You can have to blow up your database. But to the developer, in many ways, this is the great data set that Pam is talking about in India, right? This is the source of future innovation. What amazing things might we find from data that we didn't know that we had gathered, right? Or that we gathered for one reason, but we find, we can in the future offer this extra great functionality, these great new innovations and services. And that's where the tension is. And so the government is thinking one thing. The government's thinking, minimize, minimize, minimize. Collect only what you need, and only what you're going to tell people you need. And the rest of us are sitting here thinking, but we want to provide amazing new services, and we want to continue to grow our businesses going forward. And there's no clear answer, in my opinion. I'd love to hear what the developers out there are thinking about. I mean, do you ever grab data and go, gosh, I don't know what I'm going to need this for, but I might need it in the future?
And I'd like to welcome Dennis to the panel too. If you could have a quick introduction, and I know you want to respond to that as well.
Hi there. My name is Dennis Lee. I'm the CEO of PlayUp USA. We are a mobile development shop. We have a social network on iOS and Android dedicated to sports right now. So that's kind of what we're about. But in response to what you were saying, in my experience, what I found is with the FTC, it definitely is about collecting as much information as you need and more or less having your business justification on the user value for collecting that data. So in order to provide a service back to the user. Completely agree with a lot of the points that we're saying, and I didn't want to talk because I didn't even hear the question when I first sat down, but in your regard, sorry, Ilan, absolutely, you can do everything right, and you will still get hit with a lawsuit. Not sure how big or small everybody's company is, but I've been in a range of companies from startups all the way to ones that went IPO, and I think it's safe to say nobody is in the business of staying at a startup level. So it is about doing the right things up front, because what you do now can impact you as you become successful. Having said all of that, you can do all of the right things, still get sued, but you can't focus your energy on those. You'll just waste so much of your energy where you really want to put your energy to grow the business. If you're in the unfortunate position of being in that, as you have, yeah, it is a waste. You said 90% of your executive time, and that's, so a lot of this was going on to the regulation aspects, and I'm just more on the business side of it, where my theory on everything is, if you're upfront, if you're honest, as you were saying, in clear common language. Right now we're in a world where everything's in legal speak because everybody's kind of looking over their shoulder. But if you open that relationship with the user, typically you'll get a good response back. And from a pure business point of view, just being in mobile apps. And just so you guys understand my background, I was head of product marketing for Nokia, managing their developer ecosystem. So I know a lot of developers. With Facebook and Twitter and all of that integration specifically, we've done some tests where if you download an app, you register, even if you read the privacy policy, the minute you get that Facebook login, if you're using the Facebook integration, they say, this is what we're going to take from you, or this is the information you're going to give us access to. If you remove that altogether and say we're not going to collect anything, your MAUs, your usage will increase by 75%. That's based on internal tests that we've done. So something to think about when, just from a business point of view, again, when you're going after this, not thinking about the FTC, but you're trying to grow your business. You're trying to provide a service to the user. Ensure that the information you're collecting, they understand why you're collecting it, because you want that usage to go up. You need that usage to go up if you're going to create any type of virality or growth. Just wanted to add that though.
So Facebook boils it down. They put it into plain language that people can understand, and that's why they click away. Do users understand what UDID means? They just read the Wall Street Journal article, right, and say they're taking information that I don't know what it is.
I mean, a UDID, I mean, for people who don't know, is basically just a serial number for your device. That's all it is. We talked about it being a VIN for your car. It's really not more complicated than that, and people think it's this persistent cookie. Now, how it's used may bring up privacy concerns.